Forgiveness and death were just a trigger apart. But who'd let go first? Out in the burning desert, a girl chained to a rock greets a stranger with a smile that chills the soul. She never cries for help, just watches as if he's the one being hunted. When three silent riders appear, long-buried secrets and sins from 16 years ago come rising from the dust. The sun burned white-hot above the New Mexico Badlands, painting the world in hard light and bitter shadow. Wade Callahan rode slow across the dusty ridges, sweat soaking the band of his old Stetson. He'd lost 3 calves to a busted fence and was hoping to find them before the coyotes did. That was before he saw the girl. She was just a speck at first, half buried in red dust, chained to a sandstone boulder as if the rock itself was holding court. Maybe 16. Skinny, dirt-smudged, but there was something stubborn in the set of her shoulders. She didn't scream. She didn't even look scared. Instead, she sat cross-legged, sun-faded dress, spread around her like a makeshift quilt. And she was smiling. Wade reined Jasper to a halt, squinting into the glare. No blood, no signs of a fight, just her, the boulder, and a length of chain that gleamed too new for the desert. No one lived out this way for 50 miles. No tracks but his and hers. Every instinct Wade had told him to turn back. But he swung out of the saddle, boots grinding into gravel. His hand brushed the butt of his Colt. "You in trouble, miss?" She tilted her head, green eyes tracking his every move. "You're not the one I was expectin'," she said, voice soft but clear. Wade hesitated. "You got a name?" "Josie," she said, still smiling. There was a steadiness to her, a patience Wade didn't trust. He stepped closer, eyeing the shackles. Heavy iron, good as new, padlocked tight. Federal, maybe. Whoever did this wanted her seen, wanted her found. "Who chained you up?" he asked. She shrugged. "Depends who's askin'. Some folks might keep ridin', not you, though." Her calm was worse than if she'd begged. Wade crouched down, inspecting the locks. He could see red welts on her wrists, but she didn't flinch. He dug a pick from his vest. "You thirsty?" Josie shook her head. "I had water this morning. They said I wouldn't be here long." Wade glanced over his shoulder. The horizon shimmered silent except for the wind and the restless shifting of Jasper's hooves. He worked the lock, wary. "You seem mighty relaxed for someone left out here to die." Josie's lips curled. "Maybe dying wasn't ever the plan." The first shackle came loose. Wade was about to start on the second when her hand shot out, gripping his wrist with a strength that jolted him. "Don't," she whispered. "You're a good man, Wade Callahan. You don't want to be here when they come back." Her eyes were too old for her face. Her smile never faded. Wade pulled free, heartbeat kicking up. "Who's coming?" Josie looked past him, into the blaze of empty country. 3 men. They're hunting for a reason. I'm just the bait." Wade straightened, gaze sweeping the endless dust. "Why you?" She shrugged again. "It ain't about me. It's about you." He stepped back, gun now loose in his hand. "What are you saying?" Josie's smile turned sad. "You shouldn't have stopped, Mr. Callahan, but now you have, and nothing'll ever be the same." The wind rose, carrying a dry rattle through the mesquite. Wade's world shrank to that girl, that rock, and the invisible eyes he felt crawling across his skin. He'd come looking for stray cattle. He'd found something else entirely. And as the sun beat down, Wade Callahan realized he was now the one who'd been caught. Wade Callahan had seen his share of wild things in the Badlands. Men with snake eyes, women with secrets, coyotes circling a dying steer. But Josie unsettled him in a way he couldn't shake. That smile, steady as a gambler's nerve. The calm, even with the sun roasting her and irons biting deep. She should have been screaming for help. Instead, she studied him like a chess player, sizing up her next move. Wade kept his distance, but curiosity gnawed at him. "Why are you so calm?" he asked, squinting beneath his hat brim. Josie's smile deepened, never quite touching her eyes. "Because I know how this story's supposed to go. A good man finds a girl in chains. Maybe he saves her. Maybe he dies trying." She shrugged, the chains rattling softly. He frowned. "That's so. You got a last name, Josie?" She looked away, gaze sweeping the horizon. "Names don't matter much out here. Folks come and go. Call me Josie, that's enough." Wade crouched again, examining the cuffs. "These are prison shackles. Brand new. Who put you here?" She watched him work, voice low. "The kind of folks who don't leave fingerprints. Men who know how to vanish. They left me here as bait, Mr. Callahan. The real question is, are you the fish thereafter?" Wade's gut tightened. "You know my name?" Josie met his stare, and this time something cold flickered in her eyes. "Everyone out here knows the name Wade Callahan. You're the loner with a past nobody can quite pin down. You got a scar on your jaw, lost your wife to fever, ride the same trail every Tuesday looking for trouble or peace, maybe both." A chill rippled across Wade's shoulders. He tried to keep his voice steady. "You got all that from looking at me?" "I'm observant," Josie said, "and I listen to the wind. The wind says you don't scare easy." Wade's hands moved with silent skill, picking at the second lock. The click of tumblers echoed in the heat. "Whoever did this, they wanted someone like me to find you. That right?" Josie nodded, that wry smile returning. "You're a certain kind of man, Mr. Callahan. The kind who stops for a lost dog, who rides into town alone but always rides back out. They knew you wouldn't leave a chained girl to the coyotes." The second shackle dropped. Josie flexed her wrist, red marks angry against pale skin. But instead of relief, she just stared at him, measuring, judging. For a moment, Wade wondered if he'd just sprung a trap on himself. He stood, dusting off his jeans, eyes scanning the horizon. The world felt suddenly smaller, boxed in by questions with no easy answers. "You gonna run?" Josie shook her head. "Nowhere to go, not yet." Wade holstered his Colt, but kept his hand close. "If you know who did this, you best start talking." She stared into the sun, face set. "They're coming back. 3 of them. Not men you want to meet in the daylight." Wade felt a prickle of dread. He glanced at Jasper, restless and pawing at the dirt. Josie's voice dropped to a whisper, only the wind to hear. "If you're wise, you'll leave me here, Mr. Callahan. But you won't, will you?" Wade looked down at her, at the strange, steady courage in those green eyes. "No, miss, I won't." Somewhere, far out on the empty plain, a crow called once, harsh and final, and the sun kept beating down, indifferent to the little war beginning beneath its gaze. Wade Callahan felt the air shift long before he heard the riders. Out here, the desert didn't give away secrets easily, but every so often the wind would bend just so, and you'd know. Trouble was on its way. Jasper snorted, ears pinned, staring hard at the ridgeline to the east. Wade didn't need much more warning. He stepped between Josie and the horizon, eyes narrowing against the glare. "How many?" he asked quietly. Josie didn't flinch. 3. They ain't in a hurry. They want you nervous." From where he stood, Wade could see dust swirling up in 3 separate tails. The horses moved like they'd been ridden hard and steady, a band used to working as one. Even at a distance, their formation was tight, professional. Predators, not drifters. Josie's voice was calm, but Wade caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Not fear, anticipation. "You know them?" Wade asked. She nodded, lips pressed thin. "Pritchard brothers, Asa, Will, and Jeb. Men who kill for money or pleasure, whichever comes first." Wade spat in the dust. He'd crossed paths with Asa Pritchard once, back when he was still hunting bounties across the border. Cold eyes, colder hands. That memory chilled him now. Why'd they chain you up here, Josie? Wade pressed. She fixed him with that unblinking stare. It ain't about me. It's about drawing you in. They knew you'd stop. The wind picked up, dragging a strip of tumbleweed across the empty basin. Wade checked his six-shooter, making sure every chamber was full. Josie, if this is a trap, you're right in the middle of it too. Her smile flickered, just for a heartbeat. Maybe that's exactly where I need to be. Wade looked back at the dust clouds, closer now. He could almost see the outlines of men, hats low, rifles resting easy, bodies loose in the saddle like they were born to it. The kind of men who didn't blink before pulling a trigger. Jasper sidestepped nervously. Wade stroked the gelding's neck, keeping him calm. You ever fired a gun, Josie? She glanced at him, almost amused. Once or twice. The way she said it made him pause. Not boastful, just fact. Wade took a deep breath. You get a chance to run, you take it. Head north. Follow the dry creek bed. If you make it to the old windmill, you'll be safe for a spell. Josie didn't answer. Instead, she stood, brushing the dust from her skirt, eyes fixed on the approaching riders. The first distant echo of hoofbeats reached them, rumbling up from the hardpan like thunder from a blue sky. Wade set his stance, feet planted firm, the old fear coiling tight in his gut. This wasn't the first time he'd stared down men with nothing left to lose, but somehow, with Josie beside him, everything felt heavier. He looked at her one last time. Stay close. No heroics. She nodded, a small, tight smile on her lips, the kind you wear when you know the story's about to break. The desert stretched silent and wide, waiting to see who would bleed first. The desert went quiet as the Pritchard brothers drew near, their horses stepping light across the hard ground, rifles glinting beneath battered hats. Wade Callahan stood steady, thumb resting on the hammer of his Colt, heart beating slow and deep, the way it always did before bullets started to fly. Josie stood at his side, not hiding, hell, not even worried. She watched the brothers like a gambler waiting for her winning hand. Asa Pritchard was the first to speak, his voice rough as boot leather. Wade Callahan, been a while since you showed your face anywhere but a whiskey bottle or an empty field. Wade's lips twitched, but he kept his eyes hard. Didn't figure I was missed. Will and Jeb flanked Asa, their faces flat, unreadable. They kept their hands near their holsters, but for now the talk was easy, almost polite. That was how killers liked it, cool as creek water until the moment it all went to hell. Funny thing, Asa said, finding you out here with our bait. Mighty lucky or mighty stupid? Wade glanced sideways at Josie. She was the picture of calm, hair wild around her face, green eyes narrowed. He looked back at Asa. You want the girl? Come and get her. But you'd better have more than bad manners on your side. Asa grinned. Oh, we didn't come for her, Callahan. We came for you. Something cold ran down Wade's spine. He shifted, giving himself room to draw. What's this about? Will Pritchard spat in the dust. You know damned well. It's about Vernon, about the lies buried with him. Wade's jaw tightened. Vernon died in jail, caught a fever. Jeb shook his head, eyes dark. That's not what my brother's letter said. Josie stepped forward, unafraid, voice clear. They know everything, Wade. How you ride this trail every Tuesday, how you sleep with a Colt by your bed, how you lost your wife. They know you never leave a soul behind, not even a stranger. Wade felt the world closing in. How do you know all that? Josie's gaze didn't falter. Because they told me, and because I asked. For a moment the wind caught the silence and stretched it tight as wire. The desert waited, listening for lies. Asa leaned forward in his saddle, smile gone. You gonna hand over every scrap of proof you got from back then? Every letter, every memory, or we'll make sure this stretch of dirt remembers your blood." Wade let his hand brush the grip of his Colt. "I ain't got nothing to give." Asa's voice dropped to a hiss. "We'll see about that." Josie turned to Wade, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not your enemy, not yet, but you better start telling the truth or these men will bury us both out here before sundown." The Pritchard brothers spread out, boxing them in, the sun sharp on their backs. Wade stood his ground, searching Josie's face for answers, for a sign of mercy, for something, anything, that could turn this game around. But the game had been set long before he arrived. The pieces were moving, and Wade Callahan realized he was playing someone else's hand. The air between the four men and the girl felt stretched tight, like the world itself was holding its breath. Wade Callahan stood square to the Pritchard brothers, feeling every year and every scar weighing on his bones. Asa Pritchard's hand never strayed far from his holster, but it was his eyes, cold and unblinking, that held Wade's attention. "You're running out of road, Callahan," Asa said, his words lazy as a vulture's circle. "Vernon didn't die of fever. He was shot in his cell, and everyone in Dry Creek knows it but won't say a damn thing." Wade clenched his jaw. He remembered Vernon Pritchard, skinny, mouthy, the kind of man trouble found easy. Wade had been a deputy then, green as spring grass. He'd locked Vernon up for rustling, but by morning the man was dead, blood cooling on the straw. Will Pritchard's voice cut in, hard and sharp. Deputy Cole Danner pulled the trigger. He vanished with a bag of gold, but you stuck around. "Why is that?" Wade's hand hovered near his Colt. "Because I had a wife then. Because I believed in the badge. Because I didn't know what Cole planned to do that night." Jeb spat in the dirt. "You were the only one left. Only one who saw what happened." Josie shifted beside Wade, her eyes fixed on him. There was no comfort there, just cold judgment. "You kept your mouth shut, Wade. You let them blame a fever and bury the truth." He looked at her, and the pain in his face was plain for any man to see. What good would it have done? Cole disappeared. Judge Harrison closed the case. I lost my wife soon after. By then, I figured the dead could rest. Asa sneered. Dead men don't rest when there's lies in the dirt. Wade's heart hammered. He saw it clear now. He was the last man left who knew what really happened. The last witness, the last secret. Josie's presence made sense now. She wasn't just a pawn. She was the one holding the scales. A slow wind stirred up the dust, swirling it around their boots. "Why bring me out here?" Wade asked quietly. "Why now?" Josie's voice was steady, but softer than before. "Because Cole Danner ain't coming back. Judge Harrison's bones are cold. The only truth left in this territory lives in you, Wade Callahan. The Pritchards want it, I need it, and before sundown you're gonna give it." He looked from Josie to the brothers, the weight of old guilt pressing in on him like a mountain. "Truth don't bring the dead back," he said, voice rough. Will Pritchard cocked his rifle. "No, but it sure as hell makes the living pay." Wade stood in the harsh sun, feeling every shadow of the past rising up behind him. Alone on the desert, he was the only witness left, and time was running out. The sun was halfway down the western slope, bleeding orange into the dust when the standoff broke. Asa Pritchard slid from his saddle, boots crunching hard, spurs flashing in the last of the light. His brothers flanked him, Will with a scattergun loose in his hands, Jeb turning circles with a toothpick, smiling like the devil had taught him to do it. Josie took a step away from Wade, silent as a shadow. In that moment, Wade knew she'd never truly stood with him, not since the first word. Asa's voice boomed out, carrying across the dry wash. "Callahan, we come for answers, not for blood, but don't mistake our patience for weakness." Wade faced them square, thumb grazing the hammer of his Colt. Funny, Asa. Most men ask questions before bringing a firing squad. Will barked a laugh, cold as river ice. Your time for talking ended when Vernon bled out in a Dry Creek cell. Jeb edged closer, eyes on Josie. You always did have a taste for trouble, Missy. Guess some folks never learn. Josie's voice, soft but clear. I was never on your side, Jeb. I was only ever on my own. Asa spat in the dirt, face stone hard. Enough of this. Callahan, you're going to hand over every scrap of evidence you got left. Letters, ledger books, anything ties Vernon's death to that badge you wore. Otherwise, you'll die with the truth still in your teeth. Wade's jaw clenched. I burned everything years ago. All I got left is memory, and memory's a poor thing to hang a man for. Will's shotgun snapped up, barrel leveled. Don't play dumb. Cole Danner's loot was never found. Vernon's last letter? We know someone's been keeping it. Josie stepped forward, eyes locked on Wade. Tell them the truth, Wade. End it now before blood soaks this ground. The silence stretched, every man listening to the pounding of his own heart. Asa barked a bitter laugh. That's what I thought. You always were a coward, Callahan. Jeb nudged Will. Let's put him in the dirt and dig the answers out after. But Wade didn't flinch. I won't lie for you, and I won't die for another man's sins. Asa motioned to his brothers, and suddenly all three spread out, one to the left, one to the right. Asa facing Wade head on. It was a killing formation, neat as a noose. Josie stood between them all, her hands at her sides, eyes blazing. No more running, she whispered. Wade's breath was steady, but inside he felt the old, cold fear, not for himself, but for the weight of the past, how it never really stayed buried, no matter how deep a man tried to dig. The Pritchard brothers circled in, the last light of day slanting across their faces, guns gleaming. A single word hung in the air, unfinished, uncertain. Everything was about to break. The world held its breath. In the stretch between heartbeats, Wade Callahan could hear the rasp of Will's boots on gravel, the quiet click as Asa thumbed back the hammer of his six-shooter. Jeb shifted his stance, eyes gleaming with anticipation. The Pritchard brothers moved like wolves closing in on a wounded deer, steady, methodical, ready for blood. Josie's face was unreadable. She stood between Wade and the outlaws, a thin line in the gathering dusk, skirt fluttering in the wind. Her right hand hovered near her boot. Wade caught it just for a moment, and something about the way her fingers curled set his nerves on edge. Asa called out, voice hard as a coffin nail, "Last chance, Callahan. Give us what's ours, or we take it from your hide." Wade didn't answer. His own Colt felt heavy, almost hot in his palm. He took a breath that tasted of grit and fear, eyes darting between the brothers. No good way out, no cover for a mile. Jeb grinned, raising his revolver. The sun's last rays bounced off the barrel. Then everything happened at once. Will lunged left, bringing up the scattergun. Wade fired first, a clean, practiced shot. Will dropped with a sharp gasp, shotgun clattering on stone. Jeb's pistol barked, kicking dust at Wade's boots. Before Wade could swing around, Josie moved. Fast as a striking snake, she bent, pulled a tiny derringer from her boot, and fired once. The bullet caught Jeb high in the shoulder. He spun, arms flailing, dropping to his knees. Asa bellowed, charging forward, gun blazing. A round clipped Wade's sleeve, burning a line across his forearm. Wade dropped, rolled, came up on one knee, and squeezed off a shot. Asa grunted, a red bloom spreading across his shirt, and staggered back, collapsing into the sand. The echo of gunfire faded. The only sound was Jasper's frantic snorting and the harsh pant of wounded men. Josie stood over Jeb, the derringer still smoking in her hand, eyes wild and shining with something fierce, something Wade couldn't name. He scanned the carnage. Will lay unmoving. Asa gasped shallowly, pressing a hand to his bleeding side. Jeb cursed and spat blood, but the fight was gone out of him. Wade's hands shook as he reloaded, watching the horizon for any more shadows. Josie stepped beside him, her voice low. "It ain't over, not yet." Wade glanced at her, this strange girl, cool as river stones. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" She didn't look at him. A girl chained to a rock don't have much left but her secrets. As the desert night crept in, Wade realized he'd crossed a line he couldn't step back from. The trap had sprung, and he was right in the middle of it. Gun smoke thick in his nose, the past closing around him like a shroud. The smoke of gunfire drifted away, carried by the restless wind. Wade holstered his Colt with hands still trembling. 3 men down, and the world felt quieter for it, but not safer. Josie, cheeks flushed, stood among the fallen like she'd always belonged there. Her eyes searched Asa, whose breath rattled low and wet in his chest. Asa's fingers clung to his blood-soaked shirt, but he managed a crooked grin. "All this for a damn piece of paper," he spat, coughing pink. Josie knelt beside him, face set like stone. From inside Asa's vest, she pulled a folded envelope, yellowed and soft at the creases. Her hands shook as she opened it, careful as a priest handling scripture. Wade stepped closer, dust swirling around his boots, every instinct screaming at him to look away. But Josie read aloud in a voice so steady it made the hair on Wade's neck stand up. "Josie, if you're reading this, they got me. But before I go, you need to know the truth about your mother. She didn't die of fever like I told you. It was Callahan, Wade Callahan, who shot her down during a raid. She was holding you in her arms." Wade's mind reeled, yanked backward 16 years to a night painted in fire and confusion. He remembered the raid on the outlaw camp, remembered a woman screaming, a flash of movement. He'd fired. Sure, he'd seen a rifle pointed his way, but after, there was only a woman in the dirt, a baby crying in her arms. He felt Josie's stare. "You remember, don't you?" she whispered. "Her name was Elena. She was 19. My mother." Wade swallowed hard, voice ragged. I wrapped you in her shawl. I took you to the sisters at Santa Fe. I left gold every month so you'd be fed." Josie's eyes shimmered with tears, but her voice was sharp as a blade. "You killed my mother, and then you tried to buy back your soul." Asa let out a dying laugh. "Never figured you for the sentimental type, Callahan." Wade shook his head, guilt rising like bile. "I thought she had a gun. It was dark. Everyone was shouting." Josie cut him off, folding the letter with trembling fingers. "She was protecting me. You killed her anyway." The world seemed to shrink until it was just the 3 of them, the dying outlaw, the haunted man, and the girl who'd been waiting 16 years for an answer. The sky deepened to indigo as the sun slipped away. Wade felt the weight of everything he'd ever done settle on his shoulders. Josie looked at him through tears and dust, the letter pressed to her heart. And in that hush, with nothing left to hide, the desert listened for whatever would come next. Night pressed down heavy, the stars bright and pitiless above the bloodied sand. Asa Pritchard's breath faded to nothing, leaving only the wind and the low, broken sounds of a world trying to mend itself. Josie sat on her heels, the letter clutched tight in her fist, eyes fixed on Wade with a fury too old for her young face. "She had a name, you know," Josie said, voice thin as thread. "Elena, 19 years old. All she wanted was to live free with her child." Wade stood silent, hat in his hand, shoulders slumped under the weight of memories. "I never even knew her name," he said softly. "All I remember is the way she held you, how she tried to shield you from the bullets." Josie's lips trembled. "But you shot anyway." He nodded, his voice cracked and raw. "I did. I can't make sense of it, not now. Back then, we took what the law said and didn't question it. They called her an outlaw, but I see it clearer now. The fire in Josie's eyes softened, just a touch. After you shot her, you took me to the sisters at Santa Fe. You left gold coins for years, always asking after the green-eyed girl. Why? Wade drew a long breath, the smell of sage and blood mixing in his lungs. Because I owed it, because I saw what I'd done, because you were innocent. She looked away, blinking back tears. You could have told me sooner. He shook his head. I thought you'd be better off never knowing. Maybe I just didn't have the guts. For a moment, silence settled between them, thick as mourning cloth. Then Josie looked back at him. Every year at the mission, I heard stories about the man with the scar who came and left money. I used to think you were an angel. Now I know better. Wade's voice was heavy with regret. I was just a man, Josie, a man who made a choice he'll never stop paying for. The surviving Pritchard brother, Jeb, groaned from where he lay, pinned beneath his dead horse. Josie and Wade both glanced his way, but neither moved to help. Some debts, they seemed to know, had to be carried alone. Josie rose to her feet, brushing the dust from her dress, the letter still clenched in her hand. She faced Wade squarely, pain and anger, and something like understanding warring in her eyes. You killed my mother. You saved my life. What am I supposed to do with that? Wade shook his head, helpless. I don't know, Josie. I truly don't. Somewhere, a coyote sang to the moon, its cry as lonely and lost as the two figures beneath the starlit sky. The desert stretched away in every direction, silent, endless, and waiting for their answer. The coldest hour of night settled over the desert. Wade Callahan stood motionless, the letter's words burning behind his eyes. Josie faced him, pistol gripped tight at her side, her mother's shawl still wrapped around her shoulders, ghost soft in the starlight. Wade met her gaze, hands open, no defense but the truth. If shooting me brings you peace, Josie, I won't stop you. Maybe I deserve it. Hell, maybe it's what I should have faced years ago. Her green eyes shimmered, haunted and hard. 16 years I dreamed of this moment. 16 years of hating a face I couldn't remember. Turns out you were the one who kept me alive. Does that make it right? Wade's voice was gravel in his throat. No, ma'am, nothing makes it right. I can't give you back your mother. I can't undo a damned thing I did. All I can do is stand here honest and let you do what you think is just. Josie's hand trembled as she raised the pistol, the barrel lined up with his heart. Wade didn't flinch, just watched her, blue eyes as tired and empty as the land itself. He spoke her mother's name, voice carrying through the desert. Elena Vasquez, she fought like hell for you. I see that now. Josie's breath caught. You remember? He nodded. I remember her eyes, her courage. I remember holding you, a screaming baby, and thinking if I left you, I'd never forgive myself twice over. Tears slid down Josie's face, cutting clean through the dust. Why didn't you ever tell me? I was a coward, Wade said quietly. The truth can kill a soul same as a bullet. She stared at him, finger on the trigger. For a moment the world teetered between vengeance and forgiveness. A hush so deep. Wade heard the whisper of every ghost he'd ever carried. Josie's voice broke the silence, small and raw. If I pull this trigger, it won't bring her back. It'll just make me into you. Wade swallowed hard. I know. I'd rather die than see you become that. Her hand shook harder. She squeezed her eyes shut, jaw clenched, shoulders stiff with the burden of too many lost years. Then, with a choked gasp, Josie lowered the gun. It fell to the sand at her feet. Wade let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. I'm sorry, Josie. I'm so damn sorry. She turned away, hugging her arms to her chest. Sorry don't fix nothing, Mr. Callahan. He nodded. No, it don't, but it's a place to start. Above them, the desert sky stretched wide, cold, quiet, unjudging, and for the first time, both of them wondered if there might be another way forward. The wind had settled, cool and dry, brushing past the wounded earth, and two souls bound together by pain. Wade Callahan stood a few paces from Josie, watching her cradle her mother's shawl to her chest. Her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes held a strength Wade had never seen in any outlaw or lawman. For a long while, neither spoke. Wade took off his hat, ran a hand through his graying hair, searching for words that didn't sound hollow. "You know," he finally said, voice soft as worn leather, "when I brought you to the sisters at Santa Fe, you were just a tiny thing. Wouldn't stop crying, then wouldn't let go of my finger. I sat on that bench 3 days straight, listening to the nuns pray and the coyotes yowl, trying to believe I'd done one thing right." Josie's lip quivered. "Did you ever think about telling me about Elena?" Wade's shoulders sagged. "Every year, every time I rode out, I thought, maybe I'll face her this time, maybe I'll speak her name. But every time I saw you with the sisters, laughing safe, I thought it'd be cruel to drag up ghosts." A fresh wave of tears spilled down Josie's cheeks. She wiped them away with the shawl. "You could have trusted me. I needed a name to hold on to, not just the face of a dead woman in dreams." Wade swallowed hard, guilt gnawing at his insides. "I was a fool, Josie. The world raised me to shoot first and think after, but I never forgot you or her, not a single day." She looked at him, and in her gaze was every orphaned sorrow, every silent night waiting for answers. "God did not take my mother, he took—" The words were gentle, but they cut deeper than any bullet. Wade nodded, eyes shining in the firelight. "I know, and it'll haunt me as long as I breathe." A hush fell, broken only by the crackle of their small campfire and the labored breathing of the last Pritchard brother, still pinned beneath his dead horse a dozen paces off. No one moved to finish him, nor offer comfort. Some wounds belonged to the desert. Josie sat beside Wade, silent for a while, then spoke barely above a whisper. "What do we do now?" Wade turned the question over, staring at the embers. "We keep on living, Josie. Ain't no road but forward. Maybe one day it'll hurt a little less." She nodded, pulling the shawl tight, letting her last tears fall without shame. Wade kept watch, eyes on the horizon, carrying his regrets beneath the starlit sky, and for that one long night they grieved together, letting the pain run out like water until nothing but a heavy, tired peace remained. Morning crawled over the desert, pale and slow, touching the scattered bodies and two living souls with the same cold light. Wade Callahan had not slept. He'd spent the hours before dawn sitting on his haunches, back against a stone, watching Josie breathe steady and quiet beside the ashes of their campfire. When she woke, there were no tears left, only red-rimmed eyes and the weight of all that had passed between them. She moved stiffly, her dress stained by dust, hands curled around her mother's old letter. Wade rose and offered her a tin cup of water. She took it, voice rough. "I didn't think the truth would feel like this." He nodded, his own voice barely more than a rasp. "Truth don't set you free, Josie, not all the way. It just lets you see where the chains were." She managed the faintest of smiles, sipping slow. "I can't forgive you, not yet, maybe not ever." Wade looked away. "That's yours to give, I ain't asking for it." They packed up in silence. Wade checked his horse, found him skittish but unhurt. He loaded what little he had left, some jerky, a blanket, a box of shells. Josie watched him, expression unreadable, as if she was seeing him for the first time. "Where will you go?" she asked, voice thin as the breeze. He shrugged. "Back to Dry Creek, I reckon. I got fences need mendin', cows ain't gonna feed themselves." Life keeps on, even when a man feels like laying down and quittin'. Josie straightened her shoulders. The letter folded small and tucked away in her dress. "I'll come with you, for a while. I ain't ready to be alone." Wade let out a breath, feeling some old knot loosen inside. "You can stay as long as you need. I'll keep out of your way." She almost smiled. "We'll see about that." They left the camp behind, stepping carefully around the bodies and the broken pieces of yesterday. Josie paused beside Jeb Pritchard, who lay still and silent. She knelt, closed his eyes with a gentle touch, and murmured something Wade couldn't hear. When she stood, the morning sun caught in her hair. She looked older, but not hardened, changed maybe in a way neither of them had words for. Wade mounted up, then offered Josie a hand. She took it, climbing up behind him, arms wrapped loose around his waist. The two of them, strangers and kin, wrongdoer and wronged, rode slow into the growing light. Whatever waited at Dry Creek, they'd face it together, not as father and daughter, not as hero and victim, but simply as two souls trying to find a place where grief might loosen its hold. And for the first time in years, Wade Callahan didn't feel quite so alone. They rode through the cool hush of early day. Shadows stretched long across the wounded land. Wade and Josie said little, the road behind them heavy with ghosts. They reached a patch of hard ground where the wild sage grew thick, far enough from the blood and sorrow to bury the past as deep as a man could hope. Wade dug the graves himself, his hands raw, sweat streaking through the dust. Josie sat nearby, quiet and watchful, her face a mask of old pain and new resolve. They buried Will and Asa Pritchard side by side, laid Jeb out beneath a bent juniper. There were no prayers, just the scrape of earth, the hush of the wind, and the hard truth that mercy sometimes meant finishing the job clean. When it was done, Wade built a fire atop the graves, tossing in what remained: bloodied shirts, Asa's empty revolver, the memories that clung like burrs. He pulled the letter from his vest, the one Josie's father had written long ago, and stared at it for a long moment. "You want me to burn this?" he asked, voice raw as split wood. Josie nodded, her eyes steady. "It's done its work. The truth don't need to live on paper." Wade held the letter over the flames, watching it curl and blacken. The smoke rose, twisting towards the pale sky, and for the first time, he felt the weight of secrets lift from his chest. Just a little. Josie reached down, picked up a small scrap that hadn't burned, the name Elena still visible in faded ink. She tucked it in her dress pocket, close to her heart. They sat together as the fire died, letting silence settle over the graves. The desert evening stretched around them, colored by sorrow but also by a quiet kind of peace. No words passed between them, none were needed. As dusk deepened, Wade stood and looked west toward Dry Creek. "We should go," he said gently. "Ain't no good left to be found out here." Josie rose, brushing the dirt from her skirt. She gave the graves one last look, then turned to Wade. For the first time, there was no hate in her gaze, just tired understanding. They left that place as they'd found it, quiet, untamed, indifferent to the struggles of small, flawed people. But as they rode away, the land behind them seemed softer, as if the desert itself had witnessed enough pain and chosen to let the past finally rest. And in the hush that followed, with only the wind and their thoughts for company, Wade Callahan and Josie rode toward a future that might, just might, hold something more than regret. They rode into Dry Creek as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows across the little town's weathered rooftops. Wade Callahan hadn't set foot here in months, and even now every boardwalk and swinging saloon door felt foreign, like a memory half remembered. Josie rode behind him, arms loose around his waist, her head bowed but her back straight as a fence post. Folks stopped to stare as they passed. The old cowboy riding home with a girl folks didn't recognize, dust and sorrow clinging to their clothes. Wade brought Jasper to a halt at the edge of his ranch. Fences patched, gate hanging open, the world just as he'd left it. He swung down, then helped Josie off the horse. She landed soft, boots stirring up the scent of sun-baked earth and grass. For a moment, neither spoke. The ranch house stood silent in the golden light. Josie wandered to the porch, found a faded wind chime hanging from a bent nail. She touched it gently, and its thin music danced across the yard, a sound Wade hadn't heard in years. He joined her on the porch, hat in hand. "You hungry?" he asked, voice rough. She shook her head, but her eyes were gentle. "I think I'd just like to sit a while." So they did. Wade sank into his old rocking chair. Josie folded herself onto the steps. The air was full of evening sounds, distant laughter from town, a coyote's call, the clink of the wind chime in the rising breeze. For the first time since the desert, Wade let himself relax. The weight on his chest eased just a notch. Josie pulled her mother's shawl tighter, and for a long, quiet spell, they watched the sky trade day for night. "You ever think you'd end up here?" Josie asked softly. Wade shook his head, a tired smile flickering. "Didn't think I'd end up anywhere at all." She looked over her shoulder, a ghost of a smile in her eyes. "Maybe that's enough for now." They sat together until the stars blinked awake, neither ready to speak the words for what came next. But something had shifted, something simple and kind, like a wounded animal finding shelter for the night. The old wind chime sang, not as a warning, but as a call home. And for the first time in a long, hard life, Wade Callahan wasn't alone. Josie smiled into the dusk, finally unchained from the stone, and the story of the desert found its end, wrapped in forgiveness, sorrow, and the slow, stubborn hope of starting over.